glad to see everybody back, and I'm really appreciative of the wonderful energy you bring back to us. So welcome spring, PDW 2020. And I was thinking a little bit about 2020 this morning and over the last couple of days. I think when I was a freshman in high school and it was 1980, I can remember people talking about the year 2020, and maybe teachers, school administrators, politicians, they started talking about 2020. I think the year 2000 was just too close, and they didn't think anything really miraculous would happen by 2000, but maybe by 2020. And so what I can remember about that most vividly is being a freshman in high school, probably about 13, and thinking, I'll be really old. That was literally the first and strongest sense of memory about that was how old I would be. And I couldn't even imagine myself as a 50-something-year-old person. And I just thought, I imagined this very decrepit old person who could maybe, if I was lucky, I could still move around a little bit. And then I remember thinking about this sort of George Jetson's future, right? And we'd be zipping around in flying cars and robots catering to our every whim. And as I think about that and I look back at that and think on it, I realize that a lot of the things we imagined didn't happen. I will say last night I was folding clothes. This morning I was washing dishes, and no robot came to my rescue to do any of that work. I've been terror-bound to the earth and sitting in traffic still, 50 years later, 40 years later. So we haven't figured that out either. But all sorts of seemingly miraculous things have happened since then. Advances in medicine and the way that we can take care of ourselves, incredible advances in food production and our productivity and ability to feed the world. Who can not think about this? If you had told me when I was 13 and a freshman in high school that I could put all of my albums on that little box. There are people in here who probably don't know what albums are. But, maybe if we were talking to our students, that would certainly be true. But all of my albums and all of my father's huge collection of maps and all of my books and the encyclopedia, the entire encyclopedia would be condensed there. And that I would have probably just said that's just not possible. I wouldn't have even believed such things were possible. And I think about how technology has brought us together and pulled us apart from one another, and huge changes in our sort of the social fabric of our world because of technology. And then I think about 2060, 40 years away, and what that might look like. And what I arrived at thinking about this is that we have a chance to touch that world today from where we sit. I think about a student who was here in the 1980s. He was an enlisted man at the Army, and he enrolled in classes here at Pikes Community College. And his name is Mike Belinda. And Mike went on to become one of the world's foremost experts in online digital transactions, financial transactions. He built a company after his time here at Pikes Peak, and he sold it to Google. And hey, can I check, Darcy, is there feedback to you, or is that just to me? Okay, sounds good to you? I'm good. Mike built a company that he sold to Google. It became a product in Google's line called Google Wallet. He went on to work for PayPal. Mike got to shape the world that we live in today. He's one of the probably top 5 experts in the whole world in the topics of digital financial transactions. And he started and built his education here. The only college degree he ever received was from Pikes Peak Community College. He lives on a yacht today in San Francisco Bay. And the teachers and the people who were here at that time in the early 1980s, they taught Mike, and Mike went on to help shape the world that we live in. And today there are students on our campus who will help to shape the world of 2060. And we get a chance to influence them. We get a chance to impress upon them our ideas about philosophy and our ideas about values and how the world ought to operate. And we have a chance to talk to them about entrepreneurialism and creativity and their ability to shape the world that we live in. And so what I arrived at around all of this is what a privilege for us to get to shape the world of 2060 and beyond, because students on this campus will shape our community, and students on our campus, likely there are Mike Belindas of the future that are on our campus right now who might be tech leaders or political leaders or military leaders or all sorts of different leaders. And we have a chance to impart to them what we know, our education, our knowledge, the technical skills of our CTE programs, and our philosophies and viewpoints and values. And so I'd ask you to think a little bit about that, and that the students who are in your class today and how they might shape the future as we go forward. And so really for us, as I so often think about with this, the profession that we're in and what a privilege it is to get to shape the lives and viewpoints of those who we teach. So I wanted to offer that bit for you on this early 2020 January morning. And with that, I'll swoop into our presentation. I'll say, if you're new to this, there are certain data points that I always put up. I always kind of put them up in the same way. Might be a little boring, might be exciting, but the thing about them is there's a transparency of reporting of data. So I try not to allow myself to go to a place where I'm cherry picking data and saying, oh, I like this story, I like that story, but I'm not going to talk about this. We just put the same data up year after year after year and look at it so that we are being really clear and transparent about how we're measuring our success and putting it out there. Now, with that said, I'll have to say, getting to be the president of Pikes Peak Community College is quite a remarkable privilege, and the story that I get to tell this morning, as has been so true so many times as I've stood on this stage, is a wonderful, very happy story, and I just want to make sure that you recognize that I know, as I'm telling this story, that I'm not telling about my success here at Pikes Peak. I'm reporting back to you your success here at Pikes Peak Community College. And with that, maybe the ultimate measure of success for us is graduation numbers and the number of students who come in and finish what they start and get to completion. And so this past year, we set a record for our college. We awarded 4,063 degrees and certificates. What an incredible impact that is for our community. And really congratulations to you for the number of students that you helped to guide and shepherd and cajole and push to the finish line, and their success. If you can think about this with half of our students being first generation students, the number of students where we were able to, because of their completion, break cycles of poverty, change the trajectory of not only those students' lives, but also their children and their children's children, who will be far more likely to attend and complete college because the parent did. And so this is a huge difference maker for these students and our community. Retention, as you know, is one of my favorite stories and favorite things to talk about, and it obviously drives our graduation numbers. And so I just counted up before I got here, but now I think I've forgotten. I think it's 9 years in a row that we have increased our retention numbers, and I think this is a truly remarkable accomplishment for our college. As many of you have heard me talk about this, when I look at the data from other colleges, and you can look at the data from other colleges too, you can pull out the fact book from the community college system and take a look. And what you typically see are institutions that bounce up and down and up and down, and they start new initiatives, and they get a little energy, and they make some progress, and then they typically bounce back a little bit and go down, and then they're back up again. And we're just up and up and up and up and up. And this past year, you know, we when we were way back here, we set a goal of getting to 55% fall-to-fall retention. And this past year, because of your efforts, 56.3% fall-to-fall retention, a remarkable accomplishment for us. Enrollment has been an interesting story for us. So we were down a little bit in the summer, down 2%, but then we bounced back up 3% in the fall. And I'm reporting right now on spring, and just so you know, what we're doing here is we're starting a week later with classes, and most of you know that we're doing that in recognition of feedback around MLK Day, that we did not want to hold classes on MLK Day. That's new this year. So we are comparing 1 week before the start of classes versus 1 week before the start of classes today. And by that measure, we're up 2.1%. So a pretty interesting story for us as we think about our community and where we might sit with this. And I pay a lot of attention to what's happening nationally and statewide to the economy, because the economy swings community colleges so hard in terms of our enrollment. So if I look at this right now and I'm thinking we have record low unemployment in Colorado Springs, and yet our enrollment numbers are up. And so I'm trying to reconcile those things, because the economy would predict that our enrollment numbers would be continuing to decline. I'm glad they're not, because increased enrollment is certainly healthy for the college. And so I think there are a few drivers behind this that I'd like to just mention. One is concurrent enrollment. We've done just a really great job over the last, really since I've been here, about 10 years, of managed, steady, controlled growth and concurrent enrollment, and we're continuing to see that. I would say almost every year we've been up somewhere between about 8 and 12% with our concurrent enrollment numbers, and that's really helped to steady the ship both through the recession recovery when we were really dropping enrollment, and it's continuing to do that as we build relationships and credibility out in the community and with our school districts. So a nod to our high school programs and leadership from Chelsea Harris. I think I saw high school programs coming in somewhere, but thank you for your work. I think that's been an important part of this success. Also, part of this is our ability to hang on to our students, so it's certainly a lot easier to keep students than to go out and continually find new students. So I think part of our increased enrollment is also driven by our retention numbers and the great job that we're doing across campus with respect to that. And finally, I would say new programs are really helping with enrollment. So as we've opened up the new medical campus, as we've opened up new programs across the college, I think those have helped us to attract more students to Pikes Peak. And so I'm feeling really good about where we are with enrollment being up 3% in an environment that would predict just the opposite. I'm just super excited to get to talk to you about Dakota Promise and what's happening with this. So a little background if you're new to this story and what's happening. A Promise Scholarship is a program that means something out in the higher ed world. And what it means is that students in some given geographic area, it could be a specific school, it could be a school district, it could be a city or a county or some other area, that they are promised that their tuition is paid, that they can attend college, and that their costs will be covered. And that's essentially what a Promise Scholarship is. I've had a dream and a vision about a Promise Scholarship here for years, and this past year I connected that dream to a funder who shared that dream and believed in this idea. And that funder is Bart Holliday, who runs the Dakota Foundation. I'll give you a little background about Bart. He grew up in North Dakota on a farm and ranch. He came here many years ago to the earliest days of the Air Force Academy, and he was an Air Force Academy cadet. He played football and was the captain of the football team. And when he finished at Air Force Academy, he got himself transferred to Oxford University, where he studied economics and was in graduate school for a couple of years. Came back and served in the Air Force, and eventually became a venture capitalist who did a lot of investment, especially in the energy industry. And Bart is I'm not sure exactly Bart's age, but he may be around 70 or so. Very, very successful man, and has really turned his attention today to how to use the money he made and his success to make the world a better place and to have an impact. And I know Bart really believes in this program. And so for us, Dakota Promise is a promise to all students in Harrison District 2 that their college is covered if they graduate from Harrison, have a 2.5 GPA or better, and enroll in Pikes Peak Community College within 12 months of graduation. So we'll have our first Dakota Promise students on campus here in the fall of 2020. And right now we're working hard across Harrison School District to realize this dream, to connect students to what this is, to make sure that students know that this opportunity is out there in front of them. I want to acknowledge Reggie. Reggie, you in the audience today? Oh, no, Reggie. Reggie's probably out at District 2 working. But one of our recruiters who our teams at Harrison District 2 have consistently praised his presence and his ability to connect with students and tell this story. But we have a big team working on this. And one of the things that we're very committed to is we look at Harrison District 2 and we made a commitment that we're going to try to bring in 50% more students. 50% increase in college-going rates for Harrison District 2 through this promise. Right now, we are at a 70% increase in applications. We know that it's a long ways from applications to students actually enrolling, but once they're enrolled, we really want to ensure their success as well, and that's incredibly important to us. So a lot of people working on how this will go, but I want to acknowledge in particular Jackie Gators-Jordan, who is just doing fantastic work on this. What I love that Jackie has done is she has taken this dream about the Dakota Promise and started with connecting with students in high school and building a vision all the way out to their graduation for how we're going to make this work and how we're going to stay connected to these students. And it's not just the students themselves, but Jackie is very forward thinking about building relationships with their families as well to make sure that we can get these students not only into college, but through college and to the finish line. That's the real goal. So when we look at Harrison District 2, we see a population that's almost all first-generation students. We see 80% of those students free and reduced lunch qualifying. And so this is a group of students who does not have, traditionally in the United States, great track record of success in college. And so we know we're going to need to make extra effort to be sure that they're successful, and so that's happening. I want to tell you for a moment about Governor Polis's visit. So Governor Polis has been very interested in the idea of Promise scholarships as well, and I know he's thinking about it and working with folks around how we might expand this kind of program. He came down for a visit late in fall semester to Harrison High School, and really the highlight of that visit was Governor Polis and I, and there were a few others, got to sit down with about a dozen students from Harrison High School who I'll acknowledge were a curated group of students, but they were brilliant, ambitious, incredibly articulate, beautiful young people who all had incredibly compelling stories to tell about Dakota Promise and what it meant to them. Every one of those students started telling about themselves, and they were unbelievably courageous in talking about themselves and their stories. But they started with, I'm going to college because Dakota Promise, and I wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. And then they would launch into some story about who they are and what they're about. And so I thought I would share a few of these stories with you. I so wish you all could have been in that room, in that intimate setting with those students. But some of the stories were a young woman who stood up and said that she was from the Philippines. And when she's a senior today, but when she was in the 5th grade, ICE agents came to her house and took her father away, and she never got to tell him goodbye, and she never saw him again. She's not seen him again since that time. And she said, without the Dakota Promise, I could never have gone to college, but now I'm going to college, and I want to study nursing, and I want to go back to the Philippines and work in that capacity. I had another young woman who wanted to study nursing who said that she spent many, many months of her life as a child in the hospital, and she had very, very serious health conditions. and she was so touched by the nurses who gave her care there, that and what a difference they made for her, and even talked about sort of giving her this will to move on and survive all of that, and how much she wanted to give that back to other people. I had a person there who she stood up and she talked about the fear that she and her family live with because of their immigration status. And she's going to college because of the Dakota Promise, and she wants to be an attorney to help students and help families that are facing what she's facing. A young man stood up and said he was from Tanzania, and he could never go to college except for the Dakota Promise, and he wants to study psychology and mental health and take that back to Tanzania because there's just no mental health support for people in Tanzania. Another young man stood up and said he had just lost his mother a few months earlier, and he's having to work long hours every week to help his father pay the rent. And he couldn't even imagine going to college until this came along. And he's going to college, and he wants to study acting and theater. And he was incredibly inspiring and determined to do that because somebody believed in him enough with this by making this commitment to funding this scholarship program. So the students I saw there were so committed to taking advantage of this opportunity and making the most of it. And so I came away from that feeling all the more committed and determined to making sure that we gave them the supports that they need to be successful. So looking forward to welcoming our first class. By the way, when you see that 265 applicants, our goal was 150 students. 150 students from District 2 would be a 50% increase from the fall of 18 year, which was the most recent data we had to work with. And we already have 265 applicants from there. So I'm expecting a big win. You know, what's making Dakota Promise work is partnerships across the whole college, and our coaches out working with students, folks like Jackie building a vision for how we're going to support them, our recruiters out working at the high schools, and partnership is really how we are successful here at Pikes Peak, and our foundation has also been incredibly successful in building partnerships, and they're a partner to us here at the college as well as a partner out to the community, the funding community that's helping us. And so I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the foundation for this. I think this is remarkable. I believe this is the most successful capital campaign the college has ever had. We've raised $2.6 million to date for the Center for Healthcare Education and Simulation, which is phenomenal. Thank you, foundation. $2.6 million. That seemed a long ways off just a year ago. And some of our biggest funders have been the Colorado Springs Health Foundation, Mary Kay Chapman Foundation, the Colorado Health Foundation, a brand new relationship with them. They're the largest funder in Colorado. El Pomar Foundation, Inasmuch Foundation out of Oklahoma, the Copic Medical Foundation, Colorado Opportunity Scholarship Initiative. All of these have been key partners in building what is now our new medical campus, Center for Healthcare Education and Simulation. I'll be visiting that here at the end of the presentation. As always, I have sort of capital projects out at the end to give you an update on where they are. But this is critical support for a very expensive project and very, very expensive programs to launch, and so I'm grateful for the help. Refund Colorado, you see over here on your left side of the screen, is a new program that allows folks to, if they want to and they're interested, when they're doing state taxes, if they want to donate any of their state tax refund to an organization in Colorado, they can do that. So if you have friends and neighbors who are interested in how they could help our vision and mission here at Pikes Peak Community College, you could tell them about Refund Colorado, and there's this registration number at the bottom, which I assume you enter into your state tax return if you would like to return some of your return to Pikes Peak Community College. I'll work on smoothing that out. so many good things and so many facets of our success here at Pikes Peak Community College that are really important. And I want to start by talking about two of them, the equity project and an onboarding project. So these are both outgrowths of our focus goal this year that we took on. We expect this focus goal, which is to close the achievement gap for male students of color, to likely become part of our HLC accreditation process. We have to designate a signature project with them, and I think this is likely to be it. It's a multi-year project and associated very closely with very good and clear data about where those students are relative to the rest of our student body. And if you're curious about why we have that as a focus goal, I would say that there's clearly a gap. Just within the last week, I've sat down and looked at data with one of the teams, and there's clearly a gap for our male students of color who come into our college as intellectually capable as anybody, but are not achieving the same outcomes as everybody. And so to close that gap, I think, is incredibly important to our college. And I just I'm going to talk a fair amount about diversity and equity today because I think it's been a challenging topic for our college. But what I want to say about this is our effort to improve outcomes for male students of color will not detract in any way, but will actually only build on the success of all other groups here at the college. That as we strive for equitable outcomes for all students, we're learning how to engage students better and better, and that only leads to greater success for all students. So 2 projects that I'm super excited about. One is the equity project, which is really focused on taking learning from our pilot project that we did with the Center for Urban Education, and that's out of the University of Southern California. So we've been working with USC for a little over a year on the Q project. We call it Q, Center for Urban Education, and it's based on this idea and notion of providing faculty with disaggregated data about their student success so that they can see how different student demographic groups of students are performing in their classes over lengths of time. And so the equity project being headed up brilliantly, I would say, by Tico Hardy and Karen Summerson. Thank you both for your work on the equity project. They're expanding this out now from math only to other disciplines and really digging into this. Very important to this work is the idea of getting good data, and secondly, of getting support about how to use that data. So if you're not satisfied with the information, then how to address it. So I want to talk a little further about this. When I arrived at Pikes Peak a little over 9 years ago, there was clearly wounds, scars at this campus from my predecessor and his belief that driving developmental education success rates meant making teachers and faculty responsible for higher pass rates in their classes and either rewarding or penalizing faculty for the pass rates in their classes. And I know this is not the right approach, and this is not the approach that we're taking here. If a faculty member engages with this project, they will privately receive their data, and then they can make a decision about whether they want to engage further with this, which is to look at classroom strategies that might improve outcomes for any demographic of students who isn't doing as well in their class. I was really surprised to hear a faculty member in one of our meetings recently talking about this, saying that it turned out that the demographic that was below average in her classes was actually white males, and she undertook some strategies to try to address that. But in general, we know that across the board that students of color, and especially male students of color, are those who are performing lower. And so strategies to increase engagement with those students and increase their connection to learning in the classroom and more engaged and active participation in the classroom is what a lot of those strategies are about. But I will share with you too that for those of you who may be newer, who haven't heard me say this, I grew up in a household with two math faculty as parents. So my father was a math community college professor. My mother was a high school math teacher. And both of them, I can remember many dinner table conversations where they were bristling at the idea that administrators were blaming them because students were not succeeding in math. And we all know that math in general is one of the great barriers for our students. And so trying to force people to pass folks who have not mastered the material is not the strategy that we're after here. Rather, what we're after is the idea that we might change ways that we engage with students on a voluntary, individual, personal growth and development process if we want to, and that the data behind that really feeds that process. So if you know where you sit with your data, then you're able to really start addressing it versus thinking, well, I think students in general in my classrooms are doing as well as anywhere else. Having the data and information in front of you can really make a difference. So that's the pathway that we're on, and I hope that if you're hearing about this out there, that would help to settle any nerves. I'm especially sensitive to it based on the sort of the past history of our developmental faculty's experience with administration trying to drive greater outcomes better outcomes for students through processes that were really negative for the faculty members and the students who were involved in that. So, did I beat that hard enough? Just want to acknowledge some of the things coming up. Yesterday, Keith Barnes sent out a notice about MLK Day. MLK Day is going to be a little different this year, and so I'm slightly anxious about it because I want great participation and to have a really successful day. And what's different is we're going to have MLK Day observances on the 20th, but there'll be no classes. And so I'm actually really hoping students, faculty, and staff will participate. Now, we're open as a college, and just to address that really quickly, that's not a Pikes Peak level decision. The governor gets to decide when we're open or not as a state entity. And so we're open, but we're not having classes. We do have Pikes Peak level control of our class calendar and when we schedule. So for the first time, we're going to be closed for classes on that day, but open for operations. And we have a wonderful speaker coming in, Zachary Wood. He'll be speaking in the afternoon here in this theater. Is that correct? Right here? Yes. And I know he's got a number of fans in the audience already who have read his book and are familiar with his work. I really encourage you to come out. And if you're in contact and connecting with students, encourage them to come out and be part of this. There'll be a luncheon that day as well. I think we're going to have I know we have a great program and agenda of events coming up. I'm really hopeful that we will have students, faculty, and staff really participating in that. Also coming up this semester, as always, diversity team meetings. We're still trying to find our way with diversity team meetings. How do we best bring together the allies and champions on campus and make good use of our time and advance the causes and work? So we've tried some different things of sort of round robin, gathering information from everyone about what's going on. We've also tried bringing in speakers to give information about what's happening and to engage the group that way. We've had some really robust debates. And I think we're still trying to find our way, and we need your involvement. So I would encourage you. The diversity team is open to everyone, and we'd love to have you. Real Talk Women's Forum is picked up great momentum, and we've had a lot of people participating. That will go on through the spring. On February 6th, Chancellor Garcia will be here with me, and we'll be signing together the CEO Action Pledge for Diversity. Chancellor Garcia has asked all of the college presidents to do a public signing of this document, and basically it pledges that we're going to do what we're already doing, that we're going to be active in trying to close achievement gaps, and we're going to be active around trying to hire staff who are representative of our students as well. So I'd encourage you to come out and engage with that with Chancellor Garcia. Courageous Campus Conversations lecture series will continue as well, and I've been really pleased with that. And I think being willing to have these courageous conversations is actually really where the magic is, and us making a difference and advancing is we have to start with being able and willing to talk to each other. And finally, coming up on May 7th will be, I believe, the 3rd or 4th annual Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Awards. Just a note that the Community College System Office has now made available on our websites, and we're picking this up as are other colleges, the ability to put in preferred name and pronouns for students, faculty, and staff into our system so that faculty and colleagues get that information about students or their colleagues. First year experience, something that we have really wrestled with here at Pikes Peak. I don't know how many folks remember about our very first year of Focus Goals, which may have been about 7 years ago. Our focus goal was to improve the first year experience of onboarding students. Since that time, and I think we made good progress at that time, but since that time, we've adopted some form of this goal multiple times, and the world keeps advancing and moving forward. And so we've got a great set of recommendations to wrestle with. We have some challenges around sort of bandwidth and how many of these things we can do, and prioritizing what will be most effective in impacting new students as we onboard them. And so on Monday, January 27th, we're convening a big group. We're going to be meeting, as we often do, at Colorado Springs Hospice, which is one of the best off-site locations in town to sit down and have a conversation. They have this beautiful conference room that they built in their new center, and it's right over off of Lake Boulevard. And by happenstance, we have a foundation board member that's with us today who is a longtime CEO of Colorado Springs Hospice, Martha Barton. Martha, thank you for being here with us and for hosting us again. The work that you did for so many years at Hospice had a profound impact on so many lives. Thank you, Martha, for what you've done in our community. I also want to acknowledge the team that's been working on the First Year Experience Task Force. Robin Schofield, Joellen Becko helped to lead that team, but many, many folks participating in that over the last 6 months or so. And this has been a real challenge for us to identify the right strategies and implement them in the right way. I think we've been to enough meetings. For me, Complete College America has been one of the sort of key information sources. So I've spent a lot of time over the last few years going to CCA convenings to hear what Complete College America has to say. I know Joe Southcott and Jackie Gators Jordan have joined me at many of those, but others have been to other meetings, high impact practice meetings, and American Association of Community College meetings and others that have brought forth ideas. So we know what's out there in practice. We know what a lot of schools are doing. I think that from the perspective of second semester students on, we're probably as advanced as any college out there, and that's why our retention rates are so good, and that's why we're having a lot of success. I would say from first time a student arrives in the parking lot to getting through the end of the first semester, I think we have some challenges there and some opportunity really to continue to shape the experience of students in ways that really helps more students persist through that initial enrollment period and through that first semester. And so that's what we're going to be taking on, and hopefully you will see some significant recommendations coming out of this that can really impact the first year experience of students. We took on a new project this year. I started thinking about it. I had read some data, and I thought, I wonder how many students out there have almost completed here at Pikes Peak and then wandered away for some reason. And so got together a group, especially institutional research, and asked them to start pulling some data. So the data we pulled is we're looking for students who have completed at least 45 credit hours. So 60 credit hours gets you to graduation, if you've got the right 60, of course. And But if you're at 45, that means you're likely, you might be within one semester of completing an associate's degree. And it turns out that if you look at the data, that an associate's degree is worth about $125 a week in terms of, on average, additional pay for a new graduate. And so we started thinking about how we might reach out to these folks. So I love this idea, which came out of our marketing and communications group, and thank you all. Let's offer basically $250 of scholarship to these students, and that would represent 2 weeks of additional pay that they would receive if they had completed. And so we put together a list of these students, and there are about 600 in the last 5 years who have left Pikes Peak Community College, and very importantly, they have not enrolled somewhere else. So these are not folks that were 10 hours from completing, but at the end of spring semester, they decided to enroll at UCCS the following semester. These are folks who are within 15 hours of completing and have not enrolled anywhere else. And we've had a great team working on this. We've reached out to these students. We've had 52 who have responded. We've had 75 that when we looked at their transcript, we were actually able to award them a degree, and mostly AGS degrees. And we have at least 5 right now who have enrolled for spring semester, and I think we're going to get those folks to the finish line. Again, we've had just terrific team working on this and all aspects of this, of evaluating their transcripts, of making sure that the credits that they had taken were all applied as best as possible to get them to the finish line, of encouraging them through our scholarship processes and financial aid, of looking at curriculum pathways and math pathways, because many of these students, as we might predict, have math as the barrier for not completing. 5 students registered for spring is not going to statistically change our numbers and put us in a different category of success, but that's 5 individuals and 5 families who are back on the pathway of completing a degree and completing a dream, and we hope many more will come, but I'm really proud of those folks for the courage to respond to this and to return, and for the 75 who were awarded degrees to be able to go out and say and recognize that they are college graduates might qualify them for higher levels of employment and compensation as well. So very pleased with this. I want to thank all of the team that's been part of working with our near completers. Texting has turned out to be super successful for us, and again, kudos go out here to Kevin Hudgens and Hannah McNamee, who have pioneered and really championed texting here. I would say they brought this to the community college presidents back in fall semester and got a very enthusiastic response from presidents who said, how do we get on board with this? I think this is all about the philosophy of meeting students where they are. And part of our challenge is always to go where they are, not to expect students to bend always to us, but that we bend towards them as well. So a little bit of data about how texting might be impacting us. If you look at fall 2017, this is the real data, and we've had a couple of PDW speakers talk about this, but this is challenging data to us. 35.6% of students who applied that fall actually enrolled and became students and started classes. The next year we were up to 37.2, but in fall of 19 we hit 38%, and I think that was at least in part because of texting, because look down here, this is really impressive. Those students who opted in for texting had a 44.6% rate of actually matriculating and starting classes here at Pikes Peak after they applied. So when I think about that 44.6%, I think if we could raise these numbers to 45%, if we can communicate with all students this effectively, that could really make a difference for the number of people who can successfully navigate the process. I know we looked a few years back at the average number of times a student had to visit campus to get enrolled and start classes, and I don't know how many people remember this, but it was 5. That was that was what students were saying. They had to come to campus 5 times to get through all the processes. And one of the great things about texting is that it allows students to actually take photos of documents and send them to us, for example, instead of having to come and stand in line to hand off a document. And for some of us, that might not be that big a deal, but if you're a working parent, for example, having to get to campus one more time, that might be just the barrier that just says, I just can't even do this. This is too hard and too complicated. So I think that the texting has really made a difference, and I just want to acknowledge great work and it was not simple to bring this on. A lot of complicated work in the background. I should also acknowledge the IT department for their great work in supporting this. Very complex to get this on board, and it's been very successful. So thanks, team. Extended advising hours has also been a big success. Lincoln Wolf came to me probably a little over a year ago, and he pitched the idea that our current advising model, which shut down offices at 5 or 6 p.m., was not serving adult working students well, and that we needed to hire additional advisors and offer more advising opportunities for folks to get here and have live face-to-face interaction with a professional advisor. And I kept pushing back and wanting more data, but we did finally pull the trigger on this and do it, and it's had quite the impact. So if you look over the last 3 years, we've been basically sort of even and trending down in the number of face-to-face or advising appointments. And this year we were up 34%. So Lincoln, apparently you were right about this. I'm glad that you were able to convince me to make the investment in the additional advisors. And this is really such a critical part of new student success. When we look at the factors involved with predicting outcomes for students, attending advising and connecting face-to-face personally with an advisor is one of the key metrics for that. So great job by the advising team here. Really appreciate this increase. Sylvia Garcia and her team have recently taken on a program, a technology called Purple Briefcase. And Purple Briefcase is our latest attempt at filling somewhat of an employment bureau void for our students. So that's not really quite our lane, and yet it's really important for students to be able to connect with employment opportunities. And so where Purple Briefcase for the last semester has been working internally only, connecting students to on-campus employment opportunities. But beginning in January here, when we get back to school, we're going to be offering it to external employers as well. So the opportunity for employers across the community to post jobs with us and connect to students. Pretty sophisticated program that updates itself and allows for relatively easy posting of jobs. And we've had 667 students engage with the program and submit applications for employment. So we know especially that job-related or major-related employment is really positive for students. We also know that students who work on campus have higher rates of success. And so I want to thank Sylvia and her team for taking on Purple Briefcase. I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle for helping students be successful who come to Pikes Peak. So thanks, team. Well, that was our 2020 look back, and now I'm going to move to a little bit of the things that we see coming up in our future here for the coming year. And one of the big changes for us is not since Chancellor Garcia was the president here at Pikes Peak have we had any change in our academic divisions, but we have a change coming up this year in our academic divisions. So beginning in spring semester, we will be dividing health and science into natural and physical sciences and medical sciences. And as I tell you about this, I just really want to acknowledge just incredible work from Chris Johnson and her team of trying to manage health and science and the incredibly complex undertaking of all the new medical programs that we were bringing on simultaneously, and just really acknowledging that this was far too much for any one person, no matter how hardworking and committed. They did tremendous work, and it was really time to offer some relief here. And so we have been in the process of interviewing and hiring a new medical sciences dean. I expect we'll be ready to make that announcement here within the next week or so. And at the same time, Chris Johnson is now going to be leading natural and physical sciences. And Chris, if you're in the audience, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate all you've done. New programs on the horizon for us include in spring 2020, we have beginning in just a couple of weeks, emergency management and planning. This builds right into our current bachelor's degree in the same area, and will prepare students for that. Also coming up is a brand new medical sciences program, surgical tech. And surgical tech, to me, as I've looked at it and learned more about it, represents quite a remarkable opportunity for students. A 3-semester program. Our local hospitals are absolutely clamoring for graduates for this program. They are in tremendous need of the graduates. So approximately 3 semesters of formal training in this program. There are prerequisites, so I would expect 2 full years for a student, but good paying jobs out there as well. So jobs that would certainly start in the 40s at least, and lead to great careers. And so the vision behind bringing surgical tech here, I'll have to recognize our local hospitals for their input, for workforce needs, but also Chris Johnson, Josh Baker, others who took this idea and ran with it and made it possible, and new faculty member David Provost, who's been really terrific in building the program up. I think initiating this program, we had 14 slots available for students and over 70 applicants for the positions. Coming up in fall of 2020, we have a new hospitality degree program. I just met our new faculty, Herman. Thank you for being part of our team. We're looking forward to starting hospitality, and a bit of an interesting story behind hospitality. Some years ago, we tried to launch a hospitality program, and we put a lot of energy into trying to gather the local industry here with us, and we didn't get very far with it. And they didn't really have a lot of pain point around this. A lot of the resorts in the Pikes Peak region did a lot of recruiting for seasonal help, especially overseas. So Eastern Europe and South Africa and other places, they would go and recruit and bring back employees. And changes in immigration policy in the United States have really changed the way that this works. And so I think that what I've recognized around this is it's gotten painful enough around being able to hire overseas and bring people here that our local hospitality industry is really interested in sitting down with us, partnering with us, and investing with us in this program. So looking forward to this, and I think a lot of good jobs will be out there in this field as well. Secure coding, just noticed here a number of BPS programs, thanks to Rob Hudson and your team for this, but also a program with a great deal of demand behind it, closely connected, of course, to our cyber program. A new program in paramedicine, so a BAS could be our next degree target, and we're thinking it is. A lot of work on this at the legislature. Last year, new legislation was passed that really encouraged this program. The president of the Senate last year, Leroy Garcia from Pueblo, is actually an EMS, EMT professional, and he helped to drive bills forward that really made room in the world for higher level paramedicine prepared students to go to work and receive compensation for that higher degree of education. And we think a vet assistant certificate coming on fall 2020, followed quickly by a veterinary technician program the following year. I think we'll get a lot of concurrent enrollment interest in this, and people who might be interested in either human or vet medicine, but it gives them an entree into that field, and a lot of the same equipment and same space can be utilized for vet assistant and vet technician that we use for our human medicine programs. Facilities maintenance, we are hoping comes on in the coming year. Really a recession-proof part of construction and HVAC that while building goes up and down depending on the economy, maintaining buildings does not. And so we think these are great opportunities for our students. And finally, physical therapy assistant. A very, very arduous accreditation process for physical therapy assistant, but we're hoping for fall 2022 that will be a new program on board. We've been focused a lot, and I have a couple of pieces behind this saying what that focus is on this goal of being an HSI institution, so a Hispanic serving institution. And that means that we're at 25% of our students are self-reporting Hispanic background. And so just looking at the demographics a little bit, I wanted to start with to kind of explain why this story is. So if we look back 10 years, and it'll be interesting to see where we are in the current census, but 10 years ago, we were at 17.5% of El Paso County citizens identified as Hispanic background. But if you look in our school districts, District 11, 32%, District 2, 52.3%, and those are the two biggest feeder districts into Pikes Peak Community College. And so when I think about those numbers and what they look like, I think the 25% seems achievable for us, and we have made progress every year. We were up, I think, to 19% this past fall. Does anybody know, is that right? 20%, 19? So making progress. That's up from just a few years ago. We were at 14% Hispanic students. So that's moving quickly. And here's some of the things that we're doing to support this. I have a picture of Yuri here, who has just done a phenomenal job taking on the role of bilingual recruiter and reaching out to the school districts, and especially to families and students whose first language is Spanish, and has arranged for Spanish-speaking visits to Pikes Peak Community College in 2019, 12 Spanish-speaking campus visits planned for the spring, and we've had a lot of participation at the high schools and their events. So Yuri, thank you for the good work you're doing. Much appreciated. Yuri, I think you also helped to work on the Spanish language view book, which is just beautifully done, and I think it sends a very important message when we're communicating to students in their first language. So that's part of this list of things that we're doing. The communications team has done a phenomenal job here, but Google Display, I think, is where you do a search and you get sort of pop-ups telling you about Pikes Peak Community College. I'm not 100% sure, but I trust the communications team with this. YouTube, Facebook, Telemundo, Univision, KRYE, Tiger Radio, Southwest Express, the new newspaper in the Southeast Express, I think it is, in Colorado Springs, bus benches and other special events. So we're putting a lot of energy behind being authentically connected to the Hispanic community and making sure that we're communicating to them in ways that make sense to them, that we're reaching out in Spanish language and reaching out in communication venues where they would be, again, leaning to where students are. Student life programming, I just want to recognize Donna and Ricardo just doing a fantastic job building a meaningful student life programming. I'll acknowledge it is hard to engage students at a commuter college in student life, and yet you guys are overcoming that challenge and doing a great job. Some of the things that you've also done a really great job, I want to acknowledge, of building partnerships with our faculty. I think that's been a really great change and much appreciated. So SGA and Student Life, over 70 events and programming. And I won't list all the 70, but that's a lot of events. Co-curricular partnerships, I think, are incredibly important learning opportunities around the world in 90 minutes. Multicultural Awareness Conference continues on with great leadership. And attendance at larger events, we had the De-Stress Fest for fall with over 1,300 participants. And Welcome Week in fall attracted over 800, and more coming here at the beginning of spring semester. So thanks to you all. If you haven't heard, the legislature opened their session, was it yesterday or end of last week, just opened. First week, so I think it was last week, that multiple higher ed bills came out. And so I think it's going to be a very challenging legislative session, as you might imagine, in a big election year with presidential elections coming up. And by the way, I'm going to stop there and just take pause to remind you, and if you're new, this is super important. It is absolutely illegal and unlawful to use college resources in any way, shape, or form to advance any political agenda or campaign. So you cannot send out emails. You can't even advocating for a presidential candidate or any other candidate, either at the local, state, or national level. You cannot even use a Pikes Peak Community College pencil to write a note about this. You do not use our resources to campaign for your favorite candidate. You can get out as a private citizen and do all you want, but you cannot use state government resources in support of any of that. It's really an important issue, and we're going to get challenged, I think, in the upcoming presidential debate to hold our place where we belong in this and not get pulled into the presidential debates and so the politics of this in ways that don't serve our interests and our mission. And so I'd ask you just to keep your awareness up on that. But I expect a pretty challenging legislative session as well. What I know is that there's going to be a lot of workforce bills out there. A couple of the bills that have already dropped, I'll highlight. One is we're very supportive of, and it's a continuation and an expansion of COSI funding. It's the Colorado Opportunity Scholarship Initiative that has been incredibly important to us and has really changed fundraising for us. And a bill is already out to continue and expand the funding there. Another bill that's out that I'm feeling really challenged by is a bill around prior learning assessment. So we've done some really great work here, especially with military prior learning assessment. And Alberto, you here? All right, just acknowledge Alberto, three-time champion of the scavenger hunt at Jingle Mingle. Unprecedented level of success there. Also, unprecedented level of success in supporting students through prior learning assessment. Has done a phenomenal job of organizing the college around this challenge of assigning college credit and prior learning credit for military training. Alberto, you're just doing a really great job with that. But what we're seeing in this new bill takes this much farther and is asking or attempting to force colleges to do more assignment of credit based on workplace learning. And so with military training, it's pretty clear what the curriculum is, and we can look at it, and we can get our arms around it, and we can see what people what specific skills they're learning and being taught. But this new bill that has just dropped is really trying to make colleges do more assignment of credit based on work experience. And I think that this is the kind of thing that could be really challenging for us. In general, if you're below college level, you might not be doing sort of college level work. And though you might be, how to quantify that and assign it to a particular class and say this actually meets all the learning outcomes of a particular class could be very challenging. And so for me, this is one of those examples of us getting a lot of help that isn't necessarily real helpful. I expect that we will have many of these bills that we'll be both supporting and pushing back against here over the next 6 or 8 months. A very active legislative session. Anybody hear the governor's State of the State address last week? The legislative session always starts up with the governor's State of the State address. And I've been signaling this out to my leadership team, so hopefully you're hearing something of this. Next year, we'll probably be looking at about a 2.7% increase. That's what we're estimating in overall funding. And that's pretty slim funding for us. When we think about, we'd love to be able to get to 3%, which I will admit is modest, but would love to get at least a 3% pay raise. I don't know if we'll get there, but I hope to. We'll have para increases. We'll have some health insurance increases. This is going to create a much more constrained financial environment for us. So one of the things I've been signaling out there is that we're not going to be doing much in the way of new hiring. We're going to do a few new hires, but very limited. And in general, if we're looking at new things, the question will be, what are we not going to do to make room for it? And I'll just say that'll be the kind of the mantra through the year as you come along. If you've got a great idea, the idea is not dead on arrival, but the idea would likely need to be accompanied with some ideas about how we can make the funding work for it. Update on the Center for Healthcare Education, 45,000. So we started with 70,000 square feet of space. Just a quick update that we've finished about 35,000 of that, and we've got 45 to go for phase 2. So nursing and EMS is basically in the building right now. And coming up, we will have programmatic space for pharmaceutical tech, EMS, surgical tech, dental assisting, medical assisting, staff and faculty office space, some new classrooms, and we will also be holding on to, I hope, a little bit of space for some new programming to come along as well. We know we have a list of literally about a dozen new targets. A lot of that we hope to accomplish by sharing space and being efficient with space, but we're also going to need additional space. So it hasn't taken us long to run out of space in this 70,000 square foot new building that we acquired. And, I'll just say we hope to be online with all of this new space 1 year from today. So we have moved at lightning speed with this project. We bought this building. We closed the real estate deal in December of 18, and we were operational in the building in August of 19, and we'll be fully filling out the building within a year from now. And so if you haven't been to that building, I want to just encourage you to do that. I doubt there's anybody here who hasn't been to the downtown studio campus or Rampart. I think it's really important to be connected to the college and what all we do and the resources we have. I think it's really helpful for you all in your conversations with students about what's available here and how we operate. So we've had a couple of big openings where we invited people in formally, but it doesn't take a formal invite to go there. This building is just like Rampart, downtown, or Centennial campus. You can just go. Just go and walk around and see what's happening. And if you haven't done that, I encourage you to do that and be familiar and connected with what's happening there. Studio West. Yeah. Oh boy, this also known as the money pit between Dwayne Reese and I. Anybody ever see that old movie? This building is just like that. I mean, we this beautiful old building. We had this vision. We can fix it up, and we're going to make use of the rustic atmosphere and the urban gritty cityness of it. We're going to have art gallery and dance studio and all this, and we are. But boy, just the external side walls are original to the building. Everything else is new. We have a new building, and it's called Studio West. I toured the building just before Christmas break, and I thought, boy, they've got a lot of work to go. But I just visited with Dwayne this morning, and we're going to be touring through again in the morning. I think we're going to be open for business in there for spring semester, which is remarkable. Great job by our contractors. And yeah, this is exciting. So, two big new named spaces for us that I'm really proud of and excited and appreciative of this support from our community. The Taffy and Steve Mulliken Black Box Theater. How many times did Taffy Mulliken tell me, we need a black box theater. You have to build a black box theater. So when we finally were doing us, Taffy, all right, come on. Help me out. So they provided a naming gift for the theater, for which I'm very grateful. Also, the Kristen Kane Pharisee Dance Studio and Performance Space, another named gift, within the space. And we have the art gallery, 2 classrooms, some office space that will be coming online. And a reminder, this space also, very importantly, and really the big driver for it, is it opens up space in the downtown studio campus for a learning commons and student space. So Centennial, we are calling this now Centennial Experience Upgrade, and we are lining up for a student vote. I want to say about this project now, I have a couple of pictures. The kind of centerpiece of this project is a new CTE building, the Centennial Upgrade, I think we're calling it. And then we're asking for state capital dollars for this project. This is a big project, about a $25 million project, but I think it sells really well to legislators who I've talked to. So we were 4th on the list this year. There's not much capital funding out there. You got to be 1st or 2nd. I'm hoping within the next couple of years we can get to a 1st and 2nd. There's sort of a predictable progression that you have to go through. It's hard to jump over the folks who are already at the top. But what legislators love about this is not only do we train our students well, but we would also have a training center that would serve small fire and police departments all over southern Colorado who could come in and use this facility as well. Which would be, by the way, far more efficient than the current plan that's out there in action of every little city and county building their own, having one terrific complex that they could visit. Seems much more efficient, and I've gotten great feedback about it. So other upcoming projects, the roofing project. Anybody remember the hailstorm? Was that 2 years ago or 1 year ago? 3 years ago, actually. $5 million of damage to our roofs from that hailstorm. It has been an incredible struggle with state real estate and buildings and our insurance companies. But Dwayne Reese and Clint Garcia have done a great job on this. They've stuck with it, and we're getting the project completed within about a year, a little over a year, and it has been a long haul to recover from that hailstorm. Funded by the state. And next up, emergency power. So upgrading our emergency power here at Centennial Campus. Also funded by the state, completion by August. Restroom upgrades. Easy to tell which restrooms have been upgraded here on Centennial Campus and which haven't. And so we're looking forward to October completion of that project finally. Fire sprinklers downtown, really important to our expansions down there. As we go in to do the new learning commons, we have to have this in place. So it'll be finished up in a little over a year. Bridges, walkways, and exterior stairwell improvements. If you haven't noticed the wiring underneath, those are almost 50 years old now, really deteriorated, not in good shape. We got state funding to replace and rebuild them. You might remember we're redesigning them as well, so we don't have those spooky little caves underneath the stairwells. They'll just be straight up and down. And it's going to be a real pain. Some of those walkways and areas will be shut down through spring semester and summer, but we will complete that project this year. Downtown Studio Learning Commons is really the next big project. As we move out to Studio West, we have to take that on and really figure out how to use that space, how to pay for the improvements. Our downtown students sure need that. Now, I think that's part of a real renaissance downtown, that that whole corridor. I don't know how many people saw this. Did you see this? New York Times listed the 52 best places in the world to visit in 2020, and they listed 7 places that were in the United States, and they listed Colorado Springs was number 13 out of the 52 that you should go visit. And they really cited the new Olympic Museum, which is right down the street from our downtown campus, of course, and the new Summit House up at Pikes Peak. So I expect that area is going to be really booming in the coming years. Assessment and accreditation, Patricia Diawara and her team, but especially Patricia, did just a really phenomenal job on this year, pulling together all of our work from across the campus, and we submitted and got no recommended monitoring, and really I could just say that we got a very, very positive response back to our mid-cycle accreditation update. And we had 3 areas that we particularly had to address: workforce diversity, program review, and student learning assessment. And we got glowing reviews on all of those. So kudos to the entire college, everyone who's part of this, and really everyone is part of this. Thank you for your hard work on this. And a little bit about assessment, just want to encourage you all to think about assessment can feel like a real pain, but it's really a critical part of how we work and what we do. And at its most fundamental, it's about measuring what are students learning, what are the gaps, and how do we use the information we have about what they're learning and what the gaps are to improve curriculum and address that. And just sort of an ongoing improvement process, continual improvement process in student learning. So really critical that we document it, but also just really critical that we do it on behalf of our students and their learning. And we have workshops coming up today and Thursday, one-on-one sessions available. And so I'd say our coaches and our team working on assessment is just doing a great job. If you're a coach out there helping with assessment, I just want to thank you for your hard work. I think that you all have done a tremendous job, and that's really visible in our HLC response as well as in student learning here at Pikes Peak. So thank you. As you know, I always report on reserves, and we've been doing a lot of building. So if you look back, I don't know if you can see this well from the back, but we were as high as 52% reserves in 2016 at a little over almost 41 million, and we're spending some of the money as we should. And I would say that reserves over 50% really creates some concern from our state board, and rightly so. Our job is not to accumulate funds, but really to use the money that we bring in to serve students in our mission well. And so by the time we finish Studio West, which is a little bigger than we expected, and the medical campus, we expect that we'll be down to about 20 million. So right now we're at about 39.2. We will have spent about half of our reserves on CHES and Studio West in particular, and we'll really need to think about building a little bit and how we fund the next projects, which I think in particular will be the Downtown Learning Commons. But we will have spent about half of those reserves, and we're still in a really good place financially and operationally. So we've saved for the right investment. I think we're making the right investment, and this feels good. And I think that gets me to the end. Oh, I did want to acknowledge I have a couple of special guests here from the quad. And almost always we have a quad slide, and I talk about the need to recruit students and the importance and the extraordinary life-changing experiences our students have with the quad. And today I have Jake Eichengreen and Megan Berry here from the quad. You guys let's stand up and give I think most of our folks don't know you all. They are the visionaries and the folks who execute the strategy of the quad and have done just extraordinary work. So I'm really proud to have them here on campus connecting with us. So how are we doing on time? I've got 3 minutes. Anybody got any questions? I'm always amazed that I can stand up here and talk for an hour and a half. I don't seem that chatty. Yes. Repaint the sea lot like the lines?
Yeah, the lines for parking.
If you couldn't hear, the question was, are there any plans to repaint the sea lot parking lines? Anybody out there can help me with that question? I have no idea, but maybe anybody know? I will follow up with Clint Garcia and get a response to you, and we'll figure that out. I gather that you feel that they need to be repainted. Okay. Yes.
What's the current status on the tech building, Springs Fab?
Tech building, the Springs Fab building. So a lot of what we end up doing there is somewhat dependent on our student vote. And so we still plan to move our programs out to the tech building. The feedback I've gotten is we don't want to move until we really have to and the construction starts. So I think we're going to be staying put mostly with our programs through the spring. But if we pass this bond and we get rolling with the new building, then we're going to have to start moving folks out so that we can do the renovations there. So I'm expecting perhaps summer that we would start to move more of our programming. What else? Oh, yeah, Rick.
Thank you, Carl. Rick Mercado, Automotive Department. My question is about Perkins funding this year. I know last year things went a little, they were directed in a different area, and a lot of the things we had been banking on for a 5-year outlook for especially what we're doing in automotive. Do you foresee anything like that happening this year, or are we going to fight for it evenly again, or any comments you can make on that?
So great question about Perkins funding, and to just cover that a little bit more, almost all of our Perkins funding this past year, the lion's share of it went to equipping the new medical campus. And so certainly a fair and legitimate question around how that's going to be distributed this year. Really, the vast majority of Perkins distribution work is a negotiation between our deans and Josh Baker. And so, Josh, I'm just going to ask you if you want to say anything on that, because we haven't talked about this yet.
Please apply. So there will still be a larger chunk going towards filling the new Sim Center, but not quite as much as this year. And I'm doing a bit of speculating at this point, so make sure you get it in, though. I think there's a good chance.
Rick, that was a good question. I appreciate that, a chance to just acknowledge how that's impacted other departments.
Other questions?
Patrick Valley, CCR. I was wondering if there's any clarification yet on the 10% in our CCR, because the question was, there's a possibility that it's 10% for the state or 10% for the campuses, and then we didn't know which way it was going. Are we any closer on that?
Yeah, let me offer a little more context on that. So, Patrick, I think the 10% question is around the legislation that was passed last year that said we could have a maximum of 10% of students in standalone developmental ed classes. And so there's a lot of questions about how that 10% might be calculated. Is that 10% of incoming new students? Is that 10% of the entire student body? Those were the two most popular potential calculations. And Patrick, I was at Complete College America with Chancellor Garcia, and we chatted about this. This has not been settled between CDHE and the community college system. CDHE has taken the view that means incoming new students. The community college system has taken the view that means all students. And we're operating under that all student model, which would mean basically that we're already probably in compliance. However, we also really believe in the co-requisite model, and I think the data's been compelling around the co-requisite model, but I don't think it's right for everybody. I think a very compelling case has been made, for example, that students who are underprepared should not start in a co-requisite college algebra class and really need a developmental class, a class that prepares them better before that. So I guess the short answer to your question, not settled. The more nuanced answer is we're operating under our understanding unless we get a little more forceful push from CDHE or the governor's office. Well, I think we're at our appointed time, 10:33. I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you have a brilliant and visionary 2020 and wonderful spring semester. So thank you.